Okay, let's just jump right in. Today, we are unpacking a truly terrifying medical mystery, the clinical profile of Plumbum Metallicum, or, as you probably know it, lead toxicity. If you really want to understand how a specific toxin completely dismantles the human body, literally from the mind all the way down to the nerves and muscles, well, the classic case of the poisoned painter is the absolute perfect place to start. We're going to explore this clinical archetype to understand exactly what happens when lead completely takes hold.
It feels as if a string is pulling my belly inward toward my spine. Just think about that. That agonizing cry establishes the visceral, incredibly painful reality of lead poisoning. We aren't just talking about a generic stomachache here. It's a violent, mechanical sensation. As we go through this explainer, you'll see exactly why this specific feeling is the key to unlocking and diagnosing the entire condition.
All right, here is our agenda for today. First, the tragedy of plumbum. Then, the principle of retraction. After that, the blue line and mind, followed by paralysis and sensations. And finally, we'll wrap it up with the plumbum mnemonic. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Tragedy of Plumbum.
Now, the descent into toxicity is this steep, unforgiving staircase. In historical cases of poisoned painters, people first noticed the patient wasting away at an alarming rate. We're talking rapid emaciation unfolding over months. Their cheeks sank, their face turned this greasy pale yellow, and they constantly carried an expression of deep anxiety and suffering. You see, this wasn't a sudden illness. It was a slow, creeping poison descending into what village doctors called painter's colic, which then led to severe nerve attacks and ultimately total muscular failure.
And accompanying those violent colic spasms is a highly specific, obstinate constipation. Despite repeated straining, the patient passes almost nothing. The stool actually becomes these hard, black, dry lumps that closely resemble sheep dung. Now, in clinical diagnostics, hyperspecific details like this are absolutely vital. They are exactly what differentiate lead-induced colic from just a standard gastrointestinal issue. It is quite literally the digestive system completely seizing up under the weight of the toxin.
Section 2. The Principle of Retraction.
To truly grasp this condition, we have to understand the core unifying theme behind the most severe symptoms. Everything about plumbum draws inward. Retraction is the ultimate medical keynote here. The pain starts around the navel and radiates outward, up into the chest, down toward the pubes. It literally feels as if invisible claws are violently twisting the intestines inward, drawing the abdominal wall right back toward the spine. The spasms are so severe the patient is physically bent double in pure agony. This inward pulling is the defining mechanical signature of the poison.
Section 3. The Blue Line and Mind.
As the lead spreads, it doesn't just wreck the gut, it leaves a literal fingerprint in the mouth. If you're ever examining a patient with suspected lead toxicity, there is one visual hallmark you must never forget. Right along the gums, a distinct blue line appears. The gums themselves turn pale, swollen, bluish-purple, and they are incredibly painful. It's essentially the toxin proudly displaying itself, giving you an undeniable diagnostic clue right there on the gum line.
But you know, the physical signs are really only half the story. The poison relentlessly attacks the central nervous system, leaving the mind incredibly sluggish. The patient forgets words, struggles with simple memories, and processes everything on a severe delay. They understand slowly, and they answer slowly. And perhaps most tragically, they are burdened by this heavy, depressive feeling that a terrible event is just around the corner. It's a deep, neurological melancholia.
Section 4. Paralysis and Sensations.
As we look at the final, catastrophic breakdown of the nervous system, the way lead attacks the nerves is as fascinating as it is devastating. They begin to behave in completely opposite ways, swinging violently between two extremes. First, you have hyperesthesia, where the patient becomes so oversensitive that even the gentlest touch is unbearable torture. And then, it flips entirely to anesthesia, where sensation just disappears into complete numbness. It's a sign of a system completely misfiring.
And this brilliantly illustrates the paradox of their pain. On one hand, any light touch, motion, or walking makes the agony exponentially worse, especially in the evening and at night. But, paradoxically, the patient actually finds temporary relief from pressing hard or rubbing firmly on their abdomen. So, light touch is torture, but deep, hard pressure offers a brief, desperately needed escape. Ultimately, the nerve damage leads to total muscular collapse. Whole groups of muscles shrink and just waste away. It typically starts with weakness in the hands, where the patient literally can no longer lift objects properly.
The muscles of the forearms become thin, and the extensor muscles fail entirely, creating a classic clinical picture known as wrist drop. The severe systemic breakdown can even manifest internally as intussusception, strangled hernias, and the vomiting of fecal matter. It's a complete structural failure of the body's musculature.
Section 5. The Plumbum Mnemonic.
Now that we've seen the tragedy unfold, let's pivot and lock these facts in with a structured memory tool so you never forget them. The Plumbum acronym maps out the entire clinical profile. P is for painter's colic. L is for that distinct lead line on the gums. U stands for unbearable colic radiating everywhere. M is for muscular atrophy and paralysis, particularly the extensors. B is our core keynote, belly drawn back to the spine. The second U is for the unusually hard sheep dung stool. And the final M represents mental depression and weak memory. It preserves the clinical picture, symptom by symptom.
Synthesizing everything we've covered, we get the ultimate diagnostic cheat sheet based on 3 pillars. First, retraction is the primary keynote, the abdominal wall drawn inward to the spine, along with that specific sheep dung stool. Second, neurologically, we see paralysis of the extensors, with nerves swinging wildly from hyperesthesia to anesthesia. And third, relief. Remember the paradox. They feel better by hard pressure and firm rubbing, all while dealing with a severely slowed, depressed mind.
Look, if you take away only one pearl from this entire explainer, let it be this. Plumbum equals lead poisoning with retraction everywhere. The abdomen is pulled to the spine, muscles are wasting away, extensors are paralyzed, the gums bear a blue line, and you see obstinate sheep dung constipation. That single sentence is your ultimate diagnostic anchor.
So I leave you with this question to think about. Would you recognize the invisible clause of plumbum? Now that you know the hidden signs, the blue line on the gums, the paradoxical pain relief, and that uniquely drawn-in belly, the next time you encounter these symptoms, you're going to know exactly what toxic profile is at work. Keep these clinical keys in your toolkit, and you will never miss the tragedy of the lead painter.
If this methodology sounds like the solution to your study struggles, remember to subscribe to their channel for more easy stories and memory tricks. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Now go out there and start mastering the material one story at a time.